Hi, it's Lynn, your adult coach. Today, I want to cover one of the concerns that our members brought up. And let me just remind myself, it's from Sarah. And so, Sarah, this one's for you. I help autistic young adults and their families systemize adulting. And I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm going to start out with a framework, again, from Barb Avila of understanding what's going on. Then, let me just type that in, understanding what's going on. Then we want to connect with both ourselves and our autistic young adults. And then we want to practice helping them and us with the concepts that I wanted to, that I think are useful, that have been helpful to me and my family. So the first thing in the understanding part of this situation is that we need to find the facts versus the story that we're telling ourselves. So the facts can't hurt us because they just are. It's the story that we tell ourselves about those facts that creates our emotions and our actions. And that's what I really want to get, what I teach a lot at the Art of Adulting. And I work with a lot of my autistic young adults on exactly that, separating the facts from the story. And it really helps. It really helps to give them the power, give us the power to manage ourselves in a way that's more consistent with how we want to show up, what our ideal self is. And we all have a picture of that ideal mom that we want to be, and that ideal young adult that we want them to have. We want to see them happy, right? That's our ideal. And it's up there shining, trying to illuminate the way for us, that ideal. So let's just look at a couple of the things that Sarah posted. She said that life is a struggle. And let's think for a second. Is that a fact or is that a story? And I would place it in the story category because, it's optional. Not everyone would look at the situation that we're in, the facts of the situation that we're in, and come up with the same conclusion, the same story. We all have different stories. And so I would put that in the thought category of our S situation out here, which is outside of our control, TEAR. T is our thought, our emotions, our actions, and our results. I mean, if it were me, when I would say the words life is a struggle, that would make me feel kind of heavy, like it's a burden that I'm carrying. And when I'm heavy, I don't have a lot of energy. And sometimes I feel depressed when I'm heavy. And the result is that, yeah, it is a struggle. So I do struggle with doing the things that I want to do and being the person that I want to be. So my thought about it has actually created my result there. Here's another thought. Her 14-year-old daughter barely attends school. So the fact is, we have a 14-year-old daughter. She barely attends school. Is a thought, a story, or a fact? Well, we can make it a fact, and that can sometimes be helpful. So my 14-year-old daughter attended school, 5 out of the last 10 days, 10 school days. There's a fact. Then we can decide how we want to think about it. She barely goes to school. That's the thought. So there's a fact driving the thought that Sarah shared with us. This is the other thought she shared with us, and I'm going to label it the story already, and that is that the mood of the house is dictated by her. So we may, again, think that that's a fact, but in fact, 14-year-old daughter is a fact, that she attends school, 50% of the opportunities that she has, that she often expresses, upset, she gets melts down or whatever. Sometimes those can be facts, like she exploded yesterday or whatever, or she um, was highly, agitated yesterday. That can be a fact because most people, like almost the whole world, would, if you took a video of that situation, they would agree that she was, flailing her arms or yelling or screaming. Those are the facts that we can verify. And then our interpretation of that fact is that the mood of the house is dictated by her. And that, when I think, if I were to think that thought, and I have thought that thought on occasion, by members of my, by what's happening in my family. And that actually makes me feel fairly powerless because if I'm just going to react to her, I feel powerless. And I think of all the evidence. That's what my brain does, is it thinks of all the evidence of how I feel powerless. And so then my mood is dictated by what she does and says. So, that's again, that thought shows up in the result that we have in our life. And I want us to see that, because once we can see what's happening, we can take our power back. And then once we take our power back, we can feel so amazing. I mean, not all the time, probably only about half the time. So I don't want to paint a picture that's unrealistic, but the point is that our kids, our young adults, if they can learn that it's their thinking that's creating their results, we can then, in my mind, I can then say I have done my job for them, because I have taught them the most critical tool that they're going to need for the rest of their lives and for the times that I won't be there. So I do want to teach a concept. Now we're going to connect with ourselves and teach you a concept that I recently learned that is so helpful. So we often measure ourselves by, see that first one, by how much we've achieved versus our ideal. And when we do that, like ideally, I would be the kind of mom who would be able to handle all of this, whatever's happening in my world, and I would be able to handle it, and I would still feel peaceful at the end of the day. I would be, the peacemaker in my house. I would be that calming presence that would help everyone uh, create a better life for themselves. I would be able to sleep at night without any trouble. I would physically feel strong. All of those things, my ideal, which is up here at the top, what I can do is I can see how far away from that ideal I am. That gap between who I want to be and who I am. And when I focus on that gap, I feel like a failure. I'm frustrated. I often feel disappointed in the way that I show up. I don't have a lot of confidence in myself. If I continually show up in a way that I don't like, I feel guilty because I'm not being the kind of mom that I wanted to be when I started out being a mom. And it can actually cause me to feel depressed. And that right there, I believe all of this measuring ourselves against our ideal can be the source of most of our sadness. So we are not happy when we are there. So, how do we teach our kids how to be happy? Here's how: they can be happy now, right now. They don't have, nothing outside of them has to change in order for them to feel happy. They just have to create their own happiness by the way that they think. By that thought is going to create that emotion of happiness. And when they're happier, they're going to behave better, and they're going to create that result from that thought that they had that made them happy. So let's look at how do we get that? And that's when we visualize how far we have come from where we started. We have to measure ourselves backwards. Measuring ourselves against where we started gives us a sense of progress. And that progress, feeling the sense of progress, is the key to feeling happiness. We feel successful, satisfied, confident, we have high self-confidence, we trust ourselves that we can create the happiness that we want, we enjoy life more, and we're optimistic about the future. So if you want to know how to teach your kids how to feel happy, this is it. In fact, there's so many payoffs to thinking this way and to training ourselves to get more in the practice, to get this pattern in our life. They actually did a research study over 40 years with a group of nuns who they asked them to do some journaling. And from their journals, they determined whether or not the nuns were happy, kind of tended toward the happy side, or tended toward the sad side of life. And what they discovered is the ones who had more happy thoughts lived 10 years longer. 10 years longer. We can actually create a longer life by focusing on our happiness. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing this topic up, because it's so important, and we can figure out how to get ourselves there. And the way that we're going to get ourselves there is totally individual. There isn't a prescription we can follow, but other than to do the practices and that I teach within the art of adulting, and to get coached, because when you get coached, you can see where you got stuck on a thought that created a result that you didn't like. I mean, it's hard sometimes to, when you're in the middle of the struggle, to really understand where your thinking is going. So coaching has made a huge difference in my life. And that's what I do within the art of adulting with both the parents and the children. So this came from, this is another way to look at it, is just on a straight line. But here's what I want to suggest we do to practice. I want to give our children permission to call us out. So here's what we do. We teach them this concept. It's so simple. I have a little, is this? Yeah. Okay. So we have a picture of them in the middle, and then we tell them, okay, here's your ideal over here. And then if we're measuring ourselves against our ideal, we are in the gap. Then if we, instead of doing that, if we focus on where we started and where we are now we're in the gain, right? So this concept is pretty simple to teach. The starting point is over here. And here's where we are. And here's the ideal point over here. If we focus on the gap, we'll be miserable. If we focus on the gain, we'll be okay. And there's a systematic way to do this that I've been teaching now for over 2 years that really works with the autistic young adults that I work with. And it works for me too. I've been doing it for 2 years. I cannot wait to share it with you inside the art of adulting. So teach them this concept, and then ask them to call you out whenever you are in the gap versus in the gain. And they'll enjoy doing that, and you will too. And they will get the concept that way. There are other practices that we can use that I would love to teach you inside the art of adulting to help train our brain to really focus on the gain instead of the gap. Our brain just has that tendency to look at the negative. We have to train it to look at what has happened that shows we're making progress, the gain. This all came from a book, this concept of teaching it this way. And I love it because it's so simple, but it's so profound. Came from Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, who together wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain. So if you want, you can download their book. It's $12, and $12 could really change your life. It's very well written. It's really well researched, and he gives you example after example of how this will work for all types of people. Especially though, I think when we are being self-critical. And I've watched my autistic young adults be self-critical so often that I think that this is a tool that when they implement this over and over again and catch me doing it and help me practice it over and over again, we're just going to have we're going to be creating a life that we love together. So please join me at www.lindsay-davison.com/welcome, and you can learn all about the art of adulting. It's $100 to get $97 to get started for the first month. You can cancel at any time. please join me there. I would love to coach you on this topic and teach you the framework, the 4-part roadmap to systemize adulting with your autistic adult. Bye for now.